visions in my mind of a gift that's still inside. Can't believe my eyes. The moment has arrived.
Hey guys, and welcome back to Shaking for Restoration. It's your girl, Lady Fanta. Recently, I've been asked why I've chosen at this time to share my blog, my story, my testimony, and this week I'll explain just that. In this week's blog, I'll give you my reason for Shaking for Restoration. So join me at shakingforrestoration.blogspot.com as I share my story and my testimony.
I like the way I am. Though I've got a long way to go, I like the road that I'm on. Every day I'm learning more. I like the way I made. Not another one quite like me, no. After all is said and done, I'm happy with me. I like the way I am. Though I've got a long way to go, I like the road that I'm on. And every day I'm learning more.
Good evening, everybody. Happy Monday. It's another Monday night. Thank you for joining us on tonight at Sanctity of Sisterhood. I am my sister's keeper. We have another amazing show for you on tonight. Please take a moment and share this post tonight. We want to get the word out. We're talking about Mean Girls. The discussion tonight is Mean Girls. And then we want to talk about how can we be better. I have two amazing women tonight that's going to join me as we discuss this topic. Some may say it's controversial, but listen, get your comments, questions, and everything in there we're talking about tonight. So tonight, would you welcome my sis Portia Wakefield on tonight?
Peace.
And then I have an Anna-East Belgrave. All right, so we're ready tonight. We're ready, and I'm so excited about this conversation. We've all been in church or to church, whether you've been visiting. Good evening, my Yvette. We've all been in church, and we have heard people talk about mean girls, right? Mean girls in the church, the reason why they don't want to go to church, things of that nature. And we don't want to just talk about them, or talk about us, because some of us were the mean girls, but we want to talk about a resolution. How can we be better? So tonight, I want to start off with Portia. Why don't you tell me what do you feel the mean girl represents the church?
I think a lot of the meanness in church culture with Black women, because I can only speak specifically of the Black experience in Black church. I think a lot of that stems from brokenness. It stems from ego. It stems from low self-esteem. I think a lot of this manufactured beef that Black women have in the church stems from ego. All of these things that I've just spoken about are the reasons that I personally feel like how mean girl culture starts in church. You understand what I'm saying? I don't necessarily feel like we wake up mean and nasty. I think a lot of situations and traumatic experiences have led some Black women, because when we go to church, church is our refuge. And a lot of us go into the church broken and hurt and battered and abused and abandoned. And we have this, what Erica Badu would say, we're bag ladies. So we come into God's church as bag ladies with all of this stuff on us. You understand what I'm saying? And then, we get there and we really don't have a safe space for us to unpack this stuff. So when somebody else comes in, we're already combative. So I don't think I I want to say that mean girl culture in church is homegrown from indoctrination,
Mm.
but I also want to, you know, say that, you know, a lot of mean girl culture is also brought into the church. So it's both.
How about you, Anais?
I definitely agree with Portia wholeheartedly. It also stems from a lot of jealousy and a lot of learned behavior. Growing up, it would always be more about not so much anyone's soul, but how you dressed and who could sing better and who got to lead this and who could get with this musician. And it's this just this weird culture of jealousy and envy. And I know because I was the mean girl at one point in time, but we're gonna get into all of that
Right.
too.
Absolutely. So, we talked a little bit before we started, and Portia, you were saying that that is one of the reasons why the mean girl culture was one of the reasons why you left the church. Can you talk to us about that?
Um, yeah, and I want to lay this disclaimer out because I follow church people. I want to lay this disclaimer out very fine and very stern that I'm not coming for anybody, but
Right.
this is my experiences and this is my
Hmm.
truth, and it shall not be invalidated because it's coming from a place of truth and honesty and accountability, because I'm not going to act like it was just all them. But one of the reasons, so I was in Islam and then I went to Christianity and then I went back to Islam. So I've always vacillated between the two, you heard? So my first experience and exposure to mean girl culture in church was really appalling because it's like, damn, they act like that? They worse than the,
Mm.
you know what I'm saying? They worse than the chicks in the street. And I ain't never had no type of energy like that in the street because street girls and church girls are two different types of people. No matter how much we try to make them seem like they're the same, we are not the same. We
Wow.
can come from the street and be redeemed and God clean us up and we come into church, but at the
Yeah.
end of the day, if you was raised in this thing, you don't understand street code and all of this other stuff. So
Hmm.
I said all that to say my first encounter with a mean girl church culture is because I've always loved to dress up. You understand? I like, as much as you see me with my head wrapped and all of that, I like dressing up for church in heels and hats and beads and feathers and whatever the case. And I noticed that when I would come into church dressed up, you know, that there was a certain type of demeanor that women would have towards me where it wasn't really welcoming. It was more like sizing me up. You feel me?
Hmm.
Who is she? Where does she come from? Who does she think she is? Why are they
Yeah.
putting her in the front? And then on top of that, being dressed up, being young at the time, and then also being anointed drew
Mm.
a lot of put
Mm.
a target on my back for these
Yeah.
girls in church. And half of the stuff, half of the meanness and the nastiness and the competitiveness was on their behalf because I'm like, I don't even want this anointing. You sizing me up and you think
Mm.
because the preacher calling me or whatever the case may be, or the guest prophet or the intercessor come to church and
Yeah.
me out, you think that I don't even want this thing. Y'all want this thing. Y'all wanted it. So when
Mm.
God started using me on platforms or using me to intercede on people's behalf, it's like all of that welcome, sisterhood, unity, all of that went out the window. And I went
Mhm.
from Sister Portia to girl. Let's dig up. Let's dig up.
Wow.
And so that put a very bad foul taste in my mouth.
Mm.
You understand? A very foul taste in my mouth. And I left the first time. And I vowed to never go back because I never experienced
Mm.
that type of nastiness. In Islam,
Wow.
this is not to compare Islam to Christianity because they're two different faiths. But
Hmm.
when I was a Muslim, there was no competitiveness. It was
My
all
God.
easy. And I began to miss that. You see?
Wow. Yeah. It's like because before we
Wow.
go forward, everybody please like and share the post. Share this post out. We want to get the word out. We want to really get your comments up. If you have questions, please post them. We're going to try and get to everything tonight. We want to begin to unpack this myth that all church girls are mean and nasty. And even if some of us are, we're leaving better and we're changing the
Yes.
game on tonight because we're speaking our truth. And that's what it's about tonight. So, Portia, I heard you say it like it was your anointing. You didn't ask for God to anoint you and to use you in the way that He was using you. But because of that, you realized or you started feeling that the women in the church were now like slighting you and talking about you. And that's one of the biggest problems we have. Anna East, you said to me that you was the mean church girl. So
Oh yes.
talk to us about that.
It came from a place of, I think, being too vulnerable. So I went through a whole lot. And I really experienced it more from leadership than I did from people in the pews. And at one point, I've started to feel like this trophy. I wasn't good enough for like home base, oh, you can't lead worship here. You can't do this here. But when the guests come now, we're gonna put you on the front row and we're gonna shine you up real good like a trophy that's in the china cabinet. How your grandmother do with the good china. You can't touch it unless the company comes. That's what I started to feel like. So they took advantage of my vulnerability and my longingness for needing to be loved in a sense, and only built me up when it was beneficial. So the mean girl mentality, I started to adopt that. And at one point, I found myself kind of drawing people to myself in a sense where I could control them. And it was a matter of, oh, what are you gonna wear? Oh, we gotta go to sing. What are you wearing? And I'd make sure whatever I had on was 10 times better than what so and so told me they were going to wear. And when I would get there, they were like, well, didn't you say you was going to wear black, regular pencil skirt? And, girl, no, I just, you know how I do. And it was a matter of not because it was necessarily who I was, but because I felt like I had this point to prove, this image to uphold. And we all know that the church can get very cliquish. So in order to be accepted, you got to be a part of the clique. It's like the cheetah girls in the church. You got to be. I was trying to be Adrian, I wanted to be the leader of the pack. And a lot of times our image is so warped and misconstrued, and we don't understand how much we chase and drive people away. And I realize now, as much as I got on Facebook and I posted all these wonderful quotes and had all the scriptures down pat, my life was not exemplifying one that was of Christ. And at the end of the day, God had to check me when there's like, well, where's your fruit? You got all these quotes and all of these scriptures, but where's the fruit of your labor? And one of the hardest prayers I ever had to pray was, God, show me me. Like, it's so
Yes.
easy to ask about everybody, lottie dottie, and everybody. But that was one of the hardest things I ever had to do. And when God showed me that, I was like, this got to go. This got to go.
It's good that you said that because a lot of us don't want to we don't want to ask God to show us ourselves because
Yeah.
it's easy to stay stuck. It's easy to stay
Oh,
in
yeah.
that place where we just mean and nasty to people. And so, Portia, why don't you talk to us about how do you feel people get caught up in that and why and stay there?
Um,
Mm.
I think a lot of times, um, and this is only opinion based, but I think a lot of times the reason why we get stuck in that is because we're hurting, is because, and I noticed in my experience in the black church that traditionalized black women were more celebrated and more honored than unorthodox
Yes.
black women. Meaning that if a black woman was a virgin or quote unquote a virgin, if she waited till, marriage to
Marriage.
have her children, she was more celebrated and more, the narrative of God using her was more perpetuated than unorthodox black woman coming from the church with 5 babies on her hip, on welfare, on
Mm-hmm.
stamps, living in the projects, sleeping with this lottie dottie and everybody. And I think we get stuck in that because the indoctrination over the pulpit where these men, and it's not coming for the leaders in the church, but we're not going to act like that a lot of these
That's right.
sermons are not highly saturated in misogyny and patriarchy and respectability politics. You feel me? So a
Mhm.
lot of it, and then and when we internalize these messages, and when we digest them, we begin to see our sisters not as our sister, but as our competition, as
Yeah.
then the superiority complexities come in where I feel like I got to show you that I'm better than you. And we
Yes.
get stuck in that because we're praised, and the traditionalized black woman in church get used more. She gets to pray
Mm-hmm.
more, and you just sitting on your gift, and you know that God got it for you.
Mm.
Like, God, what I got to do to be like this sister right here?
Mm.
I can't get my 3 kids back. I'm trying my best. And so those girls, and they see that. We all women. We can sense when somebody feel a way about us.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
we
Mhm.
like
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not even like that no more. But when I can get like that, I know when I make another black woman feel intimidated. Now, me making her honoring that and walking in that is my choice. But when you walk in a room and somebody feel away,
Oh
and
yeah.
if you lack compassion, if you lack the fruits of the spirit, it's easy to stay in that. And then you
Mm-mm.
start to feel like your nastiness is of God. You
Wow.
start you start to believe that, oh well, she ain't dressed like me, she's not articulate as I am, and she's not maybe. And I want to say this whole Jezebel narrative is another reason why black women stay stuck in this mean girl culture in church, because everything got to be a Jezebel. You know how many times I've been called a Jezebel? Now I ain't gonna front. I ain't gonna front on here now. I ain't gonna front shit. Now I done been promiscuous, and I can be promiscuous, but I ain't no damn Jezebel. Now you're not gonna get me. You
Listen,
can't
this
give
is
me
what
that,
it's
and
about, being
I
honest.
reject that. But I've been called a Jezebel because the way I dress, the way
Yeah.
I speak, I'm unorthodox, unapologetic, and bold.
Mm-hmm.
You
So do
you
Yeah.
feel me?
you so
Huh?
for Anais, would you say that you feel that you feel like a lot of the things that are said about us, we are becoming based upon, just what's being said. So now we're falling into the traps of, like Portia said, I've been called a Jezebel. So there are times where I've done things, that have portrayed that, but that's just not who I am. And people are becoming stuck in those ways because that is
Yeah.
what is being taught.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of times, even us as believers, I find it so funny how we use scripture when it's beneficial to us. So we all say things like, oh, whatever a man speaks, so is he, and this, that, and the third. And, we can speak things into existence, but then you speak negativity over me. And then when I actually start to believe it and walk in that very thing now, it's spewed back at me. So which one is it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. It's like, they sometimes in ministry, they want us to walk in the ways, but we've got to learn how to teach our young ladies, especially the
Absolutely.
younger ladies that's coming behind us, that this mean girl culture is not okay. It's not
Yeah.
okay to talk about your sister. It's not okay to sleep with your sister's boyfriend or husband.
Hmm.
These things are not okay, but they're not being talked about in the church. And what's happening is people are sweeping it under the carpet. Portia, tell me, about sweeping things under the carpet. How can we change this for the next generation?
Well, I mean, I and when we begin to talk about sweeping things under the rug, we can envision a house, a perfectly clean house, and then as we begin to you know navigate through the house, dirt and dust and trash accumulates, and I can envision a rug in the middle of the floor. And dirt, and as the weeks go by, I'm sweeping it because I'm too lazy
Hmm.
to thoroughly clean my home and throw
Hmm.
things into the trash. And just think about it, as months go by, that rug begins to pile up because, not because, uh, 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 because there's dirt underneath it. And so that's how I think about the church, the black church in general. And this is
Hmm.
why I speak so boldly and unapologetically about it, because in order for order to be restored in the house of God, these tough conversations must be had.
Need to be had.
Accountability must be present. Responsibility must be accepted. And this is one thing that I had to learn. And no, I don't go to church, and I do believe in Jesus, and I do believe that, I do believe in God. I believe in all of these things, but I do reject the idea that of church right now. You understand, for my own personal reasons. But I feel like in order for things to be properly restored in the house of God, we have to have conversations. We have to lay these things out. We have to be Black women have to be allowed space
Yes.
to unpack these things. A lot of the things that I've done in church wasn't because I'm malicious. It wasn't because I don't care about people. Because I would like to think that I'm one of the most empathetic people that I know, because I let a lot of things slide, knowing what I'm capable of doing. But it's like, if if a Black woman, because I don't believe that I can confide in men in the church anymore because of respectability politics and sexism and misogyny and patriarchy. I don't feel comfortable expressing why I do some of the things that I do, or why I've done some of the things that I've done. But we as Black women, the older women of the church, we have to be able to not only let the young girls say what they have to say, and really analyze why they do the things that they do, but we got to analyze why we do the things that we do. How am I going
Agreed.
to speak about being promiscuous if I'm not addressing, or nobody's allowing me to say, hey,
Yeah.
instead of talking about me, this is why I do the things that I do.
Yes.
This is why I'm promiscuous. You want to know why?
Mhm.
Because X, Y, and Z. And this
Yeah.
is what we have to do. And I notice when you start trying to take a stand for God's church, a lot of the
Mm.
spiritual warfare begins to manifest itself.
I totally agree with that. I was
Mm.
talking to my coworker today, and she was admittedly saying to me, I've visited several churches, and, I don't feel like I can be free. I don't feel like I can openly say how I feel. I don't feel like I'm accepted by women in the church, because when I come, they give me dirty looks. They look me up and down. They look at what I wear. and
Mm-hmm.
I and I was encouraging her, because all of these things are true. And
Yeah.
we can encourage people, and we could try to get them to see why they should go to church for themselves. But honestly, we sometimes we are the only church or the God
That
that
people will meet.
people
Yeah.
are going to meet first.
That's so
And
true.
we've got to be the representation
Yep.
of what we're trying to serve to
Mm-hmm.
people. A
Yep.
lot we If we're mean and nasty, how are we going to win the world? How are we going to win these people? We are not going to win them, because they don't understand. I went to church and I was hurt because another woman didn't embrace me when I was
Yeah.
going through, and said, instead they looked at me up and down. And we got to understand that we've got to talk about these things.
Yeah.
And so, Anna E, share with us an experience that you had with someone when you went to church and it wasn't pleasant. How did you handle that? And why didn't you leave the church? Or
Let
if
me
you
pick
left the
from my.
church, what made you come back?
Oh, so much. Yes, now I'm married and got 5 kids and pregnant with number 6, and but
Congratulations.
it wasn't always like this. First of all, um, 2 out of 6 was out of wedlock, and although it's all from the same guy, I've been with my husband for 15 years, my high school sweetheart. Um, even then, even after we got married, it still was a lot of this. It was like that beforehand. So, getting pregnant and not being married was probably one of the turning points. I actually was a lot like Portia, where I had completely left the church. And it's not like I was young, but it's not like I was new to church. I've been in church all my life. I've come from a long line of leadership and all of that other stuff. And I was directing choirs and leading praise teams and doing preaching and doing all this stuff. And I still fell, and people couldn't look past that. And I remember being 21 and pregnant with my first child, and I'm not gonna cry because I'm hormonal, and being brought up to the front of the church and being made an example and being told that I could no longer serve and I could no longer do this and I could no longer do that. And the guy, there was there was nothing, there was no type of reprimand that took place for him. For me, it was one of the most humiliating points of my life because I was young and I was passionate for God, but I was young and I was dumb and I made mistakes, but I was still in Christ enough to know that I needed a father that was going to forgive me. And I went to God and I asked for forgiveness, but I couldn't grasp the concept of how it is that I serve a God who forgives what I've done, but yet I got this whole congregation of folks who can't look past this. And to the point where you feel the need to make an example of me, to bring me in. I mean, during church service, it was not done in a meeting with the board, it was done during service. I remember I wore a yellow dress with red and white flowers, and I had on some yellow sandals, and I was literally singled out in the congregation and was like, "You don't want to be like this. This is what you call a Jezebel, and this is what you call this, and this is what you call that." And I remember walking out of those doors for years and not going back, and not going back. And I had no desire to go back. I still kept my relationship with God, but I had no desire to go back to a place because the same people who smiled in my face, not once did they pick up the phone and say, "Well, Anais, I noticed that you haven't been in church. I noticed that I haven't seen you in a while. Are you okay?" Nope. But it got back to me. "Oh, but we heard this and we heard that, and is oh, I heard you had an STD." I was like, "From whom?" But from
Wow.
whom though? So it just became like now this humiliation, there's shame.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I'm done. I can stick with, Bonquisha down the block. I know what to expect from the world. I did not
Mm-hmm.
expect this from people who claim to serve the God that I know, the God that I love. No,
Wow.
no. And it took a long time for me to finally even step foot back into a church again.
Wow, and this was even with, I mean, you said you guys weren't married at the time, but
No,
clearly you guys had been together. You said it was your high school sweetheart and now you're 21. And that's really sad that leadership feels that type of behavior is okay, because
acceptable. Yeah.
those things acceptable, right? Those things break us as women,
Mm-hmm.
to be singled out, to
Yeah.
be called out, to be looked upon. So like you said, now everybody in the church is looking, now people are whispering and things
Yeah.
of that nature. And this is why it's so important that we build our young ladies up to know
Yes.
you are beautiful, you are fearfully and wonderfully made. And although you may make mistakes and you may be in church, don't leave God. And I feel like um
Absolutely.
sometimes in our era, we miss that, or we lack having that type of leadership to say, you messed up, but don't leave God.
Yes. Yes.
Because had you had someone, I honestly, maybe Portia, if you had someone to just love you a little bit harder, to just show you something different, you might, like you said, you're not in church right now, things may have been different for you. We've got
Mm.
to break that cycle, because it's heartbreaking. It's
Yeah.
heartbreaking.
I growing up, I didn't have the luxury of knowing my biological sisters, and so I never felt like sisterhood was very important.
Mm.
My reasoning for leaving the church, the black church, was not because of a lack of sisterhood, but a lack of advocacy, as a
Wow.
black woman. Now I'm not going to sit up here and act like I have crossed every T and dotted every I, because I have not, and neither will I sit up here and act like I, you know, have been this model member, right?
Hmm.
Because we all fall
For
into sin.
sure.
We all fall into
Right.
temptation, and it doesn't always have to be about sexuality. It can be from all the matters of your heart. We can all fall. We all fall. But I said all that to say, to clarify that. But growing up, I never had the luxury of knowing my sisters, right? And so I never felt like sisterhood was paramount. I had my homegirls in the street, and we did what we did. We drank our liquor. We hung up. We hang out in the club, and we did all this other things that we do. And when I came into the church, my expectation of it was
Mm.
extremely high because I felt like my homegirls think that I do what I do because this Portia crazy and she do this, but I expected more from my sisters because they have a certain level of spirituality that Kiki and Tia and Keisha don't have, right?
Mm.
And so this topic is very triggering to me because a lot of times I felt like I was preyed on because like this
Yeah.
said Anaya said that my the relationship with my mother was strained. I raised myself basically, you know what I'm saying? I've been out on the street since I was maybe 13, 14. My mother was there, but she wasn't there because she was fighting her
Hmm.
own demons. And I don't and I'm not up here to try to bash her, but she had her own thing going
Right.
on. So I raised myself. You feel me? So to
Hmm.
go into a church and to have, sisterhood promoted and, we here for you and let us know how you are and, why do you not why you do that, but girl, what happened? And I'm coming to you and I'm like, this is crazy. This is why I do what I do. And then to hear about it,
Mm.
you know. I was never, on a platform. I was never, pushed to the platform like this queen, and they made a mockery out of me. But I have heard sermons about me.
Hmm.
That
You
shit,
know that about you.
right?
Hmm.
And that shit burnt me to the core because how
Mm.
dare you? And I was
Wow.
angry with God and I
Yeah.
have my moments with God where I'm like, yo, you got to let me know what's really good with this thing because I feel like I let a lot of young women down when I left the church.
Yeah,
Mm.
wow. Same.
But to preserve my
Yes.
sanctity, and my peace of mind, and to not go there, I had to leave. And it just is what it is. But we have to do better. The church has to do better.
Yeah.
Period. It has to be better. It can be no more. Oh well, we all fall by sin and by the
Hmm.
wayside. Nah, that's old now.
Right.
That's old
Yup.
now.
Yeah,
Ain't
you're
nobody
totally
trying to walk
true.
in, ain't nobody trying to walk into the world and hear that shit no more.
That's right.
You're
I'm not.
absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Anna Ish, talk to us about how you felt about letting down the other women in the church when you left, the other young ladies in the church.
Let me clarify. I didn't leave. I was literally told to leave and not to come back, that I was no longer welcomed.
Why? Why was that?
And
Because when you were pregnant?
yes, so I literally was told, I was escorted out of the church right after that whole bringing brought up and put on display. And at the time, I was a youth pastor, so I already knew. I had sat myself down. Once I found out I was pregnant, I went to my leader and I said, "Listen, I'm pregnant. I already spoke to so and so, and she's going to take over the ministry, and I already knew protocol and all of that other stuff. At 21, I already knew what was going to come. So to kind of soften the blow, I was like, if I do it myself, then, it's not going to hurt as bad if, you know. And I knew it was really, really heartbreaking because I know for a fact that, and I'm trying to word this the right way. I know for a fact that a lot of the young girls stay there because I was still there. And
Hmm.
although you don't ever want to be the focal point of why people do a thing, with young people, they don't really know, a lot of them don't know God enough for themselves. So,
Mm.
like Lady Charmaine says, sometimes you're the only God that people really get to meet. And being there, I knew for a fact that a lot of them looked to me as someone who they could confide in, and it was their reason for coming to church. And I knew me being told to leave was going to cause a lot of them to go. And I made phone calls. Listen, y'all, I'm not going to be here anymore, but Here's what I need y'all to do. I need y'all to keep going. I need y'all to stay in your word. And they were like, Anais, if you're not there, then we're not coming. And I'm like, it's not about me. And you're trying to preach Jesus to these young folks, but at that point in time, when they see someone who, in spite of their wrongs, in spite of how
Mhm.
much I fell and how much I messed up, when they see someone who they love dearly being treated that way now, it's like, well, why we gotta stay with them? Why do I want to stay underneath their leadership? Look how they treating you. And quickly after I was asked to leave, about 95% of young people left. And that to me was heartbreaking because I no longer wanted to be a part of any ministry. So it's not like as if to say I left one ministry and quickly found another and was like, all right, y'all, just come on. Nope, I didn't go back. They didn't go back. And to me, I felt like I didn't only let them down, I felt like I let God down. And I know God has, had to keep checking me. Like, at the end of the day, every man has to give an account for themselves. But at the same time, how we always say people's blood is on our shoulder and that type of stuff. And I
Right.
just felt like, what if I didn't get pregnant? And then of course now you start doing the victim thing now, and of course when people fill your head up with craziness and you
Mhm.
start to believe it, well, it is granted, yes, I had sex and I got pregnant, but at the same time I had people, one person, Sister Linda, I would never forget her. She was the only person who kept telling me, Anna, the sin was in the sex, not in the baby.
With baby.
That's
Mhm.
it. Did you ask the Lord for forgiveness for it? I was like, yeah. Although I got pregnant again. But I was like, yeah. And she said, that's it. You don't owe man no explanation. But even then, deep down inside, I felt like I had let God down. I let all these young people down. And I had a hard time forgiving myself.
Yeah, I think it's because a lot of times what had been taught in the past that if you mess up, then you get sat down like
Oh
you
yeah.
were, and where is the restoration? Because honestly, not every church is like that and not every leader is like that. But
Absolutely.
when you're trying to present Christ to a group of people who all they see or all they have heard is the negativity of church, it's hard. And
Yeah.
when all you know is that growing up in church, you've been around these mean and nasty and bitter women, it's hard to see God in that. And
Hmm.
when for me, when I was in church, people would say, "Oh, she's not nice. She has a mean
Yeah.
face. She doesn't talk. She doesn't
Hmm.
smile." But you know, at the same time, we've got to understand it's a two-way thing because some people are not being mean just because they're mean people. Some people
For
have
God.
really gone through things,
Yes.
right? And the things that they have experienced in life, they translate it over when they walk through the doors of the
Yeah.
church. And
Build that
it's
wall up.
not right. And it's not the leaders total responsibility to deliver us. We've got to
Yeah.
do something. The thing is that we've been going to church wanting the leader to deliver us instead
Wave a
of
wand.
seeking
Mm-hmm.
the God of the leader for ourselves.
Cells. Yeah.
So now, how do we get past these nasty ways? How do we
Hmm.
say, you know what? We've seen that and we don't want to be that because the next generation needs to see change
Absolutely.
now. So, Portia, what would you say in this pandemic that, when we're coming out and the church is opening, what does change look like for us as women walking back through those church doors to accept the world that's about to come in that does not know church?
Well, I think the first thing that we must do is that we must expand the opportunities for other black women inside the black church to share their testimonies.
Yeah.
We all, not all of us want to be married. Not all of us want to be married. I don't. I don't aspire to be married. So and when we begin to frame black church or black women in church as that's what black church is. You go to church and you be groomed and you learn how to be a wife.
That's
When we
right.
begin to frame that as church, that's the first problem. When we don't allow other women, other black women, and I'm speaking specifically on unorthodox black women. When we are selfish with our platform and selfish with our mic, and we are led by respectability politics, meaning, well, if she doesn't have this, if she can't say this, and if she doesn't have these qualities and these things, then she has no right to speak. And so then you have a lot of young women in the pews with testimonies that have nothing to do with marriage,
Wow.
nothing to do with having children out of wedlock. You have women that are dealing with depression. You are having women that are dealing with, food insecurities. You have women that are dealing with, I don't know, abandonment, rejection, depression, postpartum depression. You have
Mm-hmm.
all of these women in the church that are dealing with these things, and we only highlight marriage and motherhood.
Absolutely.
We only have symposiums and conferences that are centered around marriage and
Yes.
motherhood, and we neglect that there are maybe 50 other young girls in the pews that are going through a lot of different stuff, schooling, all of these
Yeah.
things, rape. We neglect those things. So that's the first thing that we need to do. We need to share our platform. We need to say, hey, sis, even if it makes us uncomfortable. And that's the
Yes.
problem with us, is that we have this superiority complex, as I stated before, where we have to feel like, oh, no, 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 I ain't never did that. Oh, the blood of
Yes.
Jesus, I ain't never had that. And
Right. Mm-hmm.
girl, we all done had these legs cocked up to the side. Okay, yes, we have. I'm just gonna keep it real. I got like
Yes.
3 abortions under my belt.
Mm.
I've been able to talk about
Talk
that in
about it.
I ain't had not one
Taboo.
talk about me having abortions. I ain't had no
Wow.
platform
Mm-hmm.
talking about me being raped. I ain't had no platform talking
Mm.
about me having 3 kids by 3 different men, on food stamps, on welfare, a high school dropout, you know, wanted to kill myself.
Mm.
I never had a platform. And look how many women deal with that.
Dealing with the same
This
thing. Yes.
So when we come back to church, first of all, like Sister said, we have to we the responsibility of deliverance is choice, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if I
Yep.
want to be delivered
Absolutely.
from self, it's a self job, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's the first thing in this pandemic, is that we as black women in the black church, if this is what you're subscribed to, we got to say, hey, look, we all ain't the victim.
Mm-hmm.
All, we're the monster in somebody else's story. Trust me, I'm the
Absolutely.
monster in somebody else's story. I ain't the
Absolutely.
victim. You know, we're all the monsters. So when we accept that, I haven't always been a woman of God. I haven't always been a part
Mm.
of the Proverbs 31 coalition team. You know what I'm saying? But that don't mean that I'm not worthy to be delivered and saved and restored and redeemed. That's for number one. And then when I go to church, I have to. God is real. We
Yes,
can't
he
say
is.
God is real and we fake. We
Come
can't
on
say
now.
God is real. Oh, my God is true and living, but then I'm hiding parts about me that
Yes.
scared. That, oh no, I'm gonna
Can't
tell
let them
her that
see that.
I
Mm-hmm.
dealt with a man
Mm-hmm.
leaving me, and I had a
Mm-hmm.
heartbreak. I'm damn sure ain't gonna tell them that I had 3 abortions, because I still gotta make
Mm-hmm.
them feel like I'm more important, because
Absolutely.
these men in the church have built this this pedestal for traditionalized black women, because nobody wants to admit that unorthodox black women can still be used by God.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It doesn't matter. If
Mm.
we get past the messing up part, the part where we messed up or we have fallen short,
Yeah.
sometimes it's going to take people to restore us. We've got to be sisters that restore one another back to God, back to our rightful places, to say, hey, I seen you mess up. I see you go through, but let me show you a better way. And like you
Absolutely.
said, Portia, you just said, like, you couldn't talk about the 3 abortions you had. We church can't be like that when we come
Oh
back.
no.
We've got to open up doors. Nakazi said, love that God is real, but some of the church folk are fake. Absolutely.
Mm.
And if we're all honest, we have been the fake church folk
Yeah,
at
for so
one
long.
point or another. It just takes us to be honest, open, and real to say, I have been all of those things, but the
Yes.
God that I serve is much bigger. And because he's much bigger, I'm not that anymore. And then
Amen.
stop holding each other to that past, right?
Hmm. You'll
How
be.
about you, Annie?
I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead. No,
No, I
no,
was
go ahead,
gonna say
Portia.
before, and I don't mean to cut you off, but I was
No,
going.
no, go ahead.
You know how many black women in church have had to lick their own wounds, that have had to
Mm.
take them on stuff. You know how many times I done been in church and know I'm living wrong, but knowing that I want to do right, but knowing that if I say this or if I go, if I even give off that aroma that I'm sending, that I'm going to be
Mm.
crucified, and then I got to go home and I got to self medicate and I got to lick my own wounds and I got to be my own sister. You know what I'm saying? And it's
Right.
time out for that. It's time out for that. God is not pleased with the black church. He's not
Yeah.
pleased with black women in black church. I don't care how you package it. He's not pleased.
Mm.
Absolutely. And this is why we're having this conversation tonight,
Absolutely.
to begin to unpack these things, because we've got to be
Mm.
better. What do you say, Annie?
Whew. I actually recently had a very brief conversation with my first lady. I thank God for my church. This is why I say every church is not like this, y'all. We got some
Right.
great,
Absolutely.
great, great leaders out there. And for those of you who don't know, I study Christian psychology.
Mm.
And she messaged me a couple of months ago, like right when the pandemic first kind of hit. And she said, "Okay, sis, I'm going to need you to whip that degree out because when the church doors open up, we're going to have some real issues
Mm.
to deal with." And in my mind, I'm thinking, "But why are we dealing with them all along?" And then I had to look down at my arm. And I got this tattoo, a semicolon, back in 2018 after a thankful failed suicide attempt.
Mm.
And one thing I notice is that we don't have enough people in church talking about here. We talk a lot about the spirit man, but we don't talk about how that affects
Mm.
your mental as well, or how the mental affects the spirit man. And we have this thing, especially amongst women in the church, where we label anyone who talks about therapy, or we talk about counseling, "You crazy," or "She crazy," or "That's just the demon." And that is a conversation that needs to be, the narrative needs to change
Needs to be dismissed.
completely. I've never been so free the way I am now to talk about mental health, especially when it comes to the church, like I am now, because I had to go through it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I sat in my bathtub, and my husband said I literally went to my kitchen. I grabbed the biggest kitchen knife that I could find, and I filled my tub up with water, and I was ready to cut my neck from jugular to jugular. And if that didn't kill me, the water was going to drown me.
Wow.
And I had to sit in a psychiatric ward in Interfaith, right over here on what's that? Yeah, no, yeah, if you from Brooklyn, you already know Interfaith. I was finna die one way or the other. And it took that was my coming to Jesus moment. And this is totally a little different, but I sat inside of that psych ward. And at that time I was dealing with postpartum depression. And this was like right after I had Symphony, my last daughter. And I remember waiting now to be evaluated by the psychiatrist, because I had to wait for the next psychiatrist to come in, because it was like I got admitted at like 1 o'clock in the morning. So now after that one left, I had to wait for the next one to come in at 10 a.m. And when you're in a psychiatric ward, they make you take off anything that looks like a hazard. So I remember I had on a pair of jeans that had a drawstring, and they made me take that out. I couldn't have my shoes. I couldn't have my phone, any hair ties, any bobby pins in case I try to cut myself with them. And I'm waiting for this next psychiatrist to come in. And there's a guy, I mean, people are in there. It's the psych ward, y'all. People are literally in straight jackets and bouncing from, like, banging their heads against walls. And I'm sitting there. At that time, my breasts were engorged because I was still nursing. And all I kept thinking was, I need to get something in Hand Express. And I was trying to keep calm. I was reciting scripture and I was singing to myself. And I remember this white guy come in, and he slid across in the chair next to me. And he was like, "I need what you have." And I was like, "What?" He was like, "How is it that in the midst of all of this chaos, you can be so calm?" I said, "That's nothing but the peace of God that surpasses all understanding." He said, "I need that. I need that
Wow.
right now." And in that moment, I realized, like, church is so beyond the four walls. Like, we every Sunday we get up and we preach hard and we sweating out stuff. And we're preaching to folks who already serve God.
Come on, talk about it.
We are doing this every single week, and it took me sitting there and ministering to this young man who was waiting for a meth detox to introduce him to Christ, to understand that there was so much ministry outside of the four walls. So knowing now, dealing with that, that's like something that I journal a lot. And every time I go back, because sometimes you got to go back and read and see where God brought you from. And I'll go back and I'll read. And even in the midst of this pandemic, and I see how God has blessed me, I haven't lacked for nothing. I've started several businesses, even from since March. And understanding now that even although all of that is great, for someone who has been diagnosed with clinical depression for over 11 years and was on all types of medications, from me, the minute I heard we were going to be on lockdown, I was afraid because I was just like, they're going to put me back on that stuff. I'm not trying to take that. And then I found that I was pregnant. So I was like, Lord, keep my mind. And understanding now how God has honored just that. He has kept my mind from March till now, and I have no doubt that he's going to continue to do
Amen.
that. So knowing that when the church stores open back up, I'm going to be equipped to talk to somebody and help somebody. And that is something that definitely needs to change when the church stores open back up. We got to get rid of programs. We're not interested in your 80 million song sets for praise and worship. Nobody cares. Give me Jesus. That's it. At this point, what does Jesus want us to do? What Jesus wasn't interested in all of that. When he was going to the synagogues, he was like, all right, who leading praise and worship today? The whole point, he was on a mission, and that is the kind of mindset that we need to have, a Jesus-minded mission mindset at this point, because the old
Amen.
way is not going to work. We are going to drive more people to hell than we lead them to heaven if we don't get rid of that crazy mentality.
And
I totally.
Jesus was an advocate. So if
Hmm.
we lack,
Absolutely.
Jesus was an advocate for disenfranchised people. So if black women are in church and they lack advocacy, I question their stance in Christianity.
Absolutely.
I wrote a post maybe a couple of hours ago, and it came to me, and I credit God, all praises to Him, and basically it was he was like, what? How many witnesses have you killed this week? In a,
Jesus. I saw that post.
in a week,
Yes.
in a year? How many people have you killed? How many witnesses have you killed? Maybe it's not people not, denying who I am.
Hmm.
Maybe they reject the idea that I'm transformative in your life because you lack to evolve, because
Jesus.
you lack to
Mm,
use the platform, because you lack to tell a sister, hey, it's fine, because you lack loyalty, or you lack integrity, or you lack, being
my
trustworthy.
God.
That's why people don't come to me, because of you. And so that's where what the sister was saying, where we have to be real,
Oh,
good,
yeah.
bad, ugly, indifferent, and we cannot be afraid to say, yo,
I've
I'm a
been
hot
there.
mess.
Hmm.
Yeah.
We hot mess. That
And
when
the,
I'm sorry,
go ahead. No, no, no. Go ahead. I
but
want
when
you to
we
finish your
present
point.
this, when we say, look, I'm so messed up, y'all, but I love God, and
Relate.
my
Be
love for
relatable.
right, but my love for God doesn't justify my sin. It's not a
Hmm.
license
Hmm.
for me to, do what I do, and that's
Right.
what it is. But what I'm saying to you as a black woman, I'm your advocate in Christ. That means I'm not gonna, judge you, but as your advocate in Christ and as your sister's keeper and as a woman of God, I'm here to intercede on your behalf, and
Yeah.
not in prayer, but also I feel like love is not only a noun, but it's a verb too. How can I love you?
Absolutely.
What can I do? What is my
Sure
service?
it is.
Let
Hmm.
me lay at your feet. There was a time in church, where God got the glory out of me, and because I could identify with this woman, I knew without her even saying, when she was crying, I knew that cry. I knew what it was about as a
Wow.
black mother, and God allowed me to lay at this woman's feet and pray over her feet. As a
Hmm.
Mm.
servant, this is my service. We can't go back to church, and I like dressing up. Trust
Pastor
me,
Diddy.
got
Yes.
words for days. You feel me? Done, done did that, okay? But that's not what God wants me to do. Now,
Yeah.
it is His will for me to return back to church, but it ain't gonna be no time soon. But when it do, I gotta come back real.
Yeah.
I gotta come back real. We gotta come back real, and we got to be. We have to have a certain level of transparency, because the church
Mm.
has a bad habit of this. Oh, child, you got to be discreet because everybody.
Don't tell nobody.
Right.
Hmm.
I
I
trust
was
God enough to trust who I'm sharing my
listen.
testimony
I
about.
was
Yes.
just I was just going to say that because we have a lot of people that don't want to be transparent in the church because there are other women that take what they have said, what they have disclosed in these women
Run with it.
meetings and ran with it. And they
Hmm.
have exposed them. And we're supposed to be the safe haven for these things. And so now we've got to begin to break down those myths and those barriers to say, listen, if I'm supposed to be the safe haven, I've got to learn how to shut my mouth.
Shut up. Shut up ministry. Hmm.
I've got to learn how to really keep those secrets and keep those things that's near and dear to people's hearts and just shut up. Why?
Yes.
Because it's killing. We're killing each other.
Mhm.
We're
Yes.
killing each other. And
I,
we may not be physically doing it, but we're doing it with the things that we're
Spiritually.
saying. And then we're
Yeah.
causing people to want to take their lives
Their own lives. Yes.
I've
because of things
made,
that we're doing and saying. And
I've,
each of you ladies have said that tonight. There were things that you went through that caused you to feel like you didn't measure up. You weren't good enough. You didn't have anyone in church to talk to. Who could you run to because another woman, another sister wasn't an advocate for you? And
Hmm.
we've got to do better. There will be a part two because we are together gonna impact this. You ladies are amazing. And I know that God gave this to me so that we can effect change. We are affecting change for the next generation. And we don't
That's
care
right.
who don't like it, who's not with it,
Mhm.
because at the end of the day, we're trying to save and win a generation. We're trying to
Yes.
win a world that's not church and that is not saved because God loves every last one of us the same, and He desires that none of us be lost.
yep.
And
Amen.
because that's what He desires, we are going to make sure that we affect change. And if God uses my platform, then listen, to God be the glory, to me be the steward, and we're going to do it together.
Mm.
Would you leave your last parting words for tonight? We're going to go with Annie East and then Portia.
I really just want that if you don't take anything else away from all that was said tonight, is for especially us Black women. I want each and every one of us, myself included, is to really get to a place where we stand in front of the mirror and we analyze ourselves. Look for the things that are within you that are not like God. Look for those things and get to the root of why you're like that and fix it. Because I think that God has allowed this entire world to shut down because we as the church wasn't doing our job. I'ma just keep it real.
Okay.
And we this is like our sabbatical because we didn't cause so much damage. So now he has to go in now and do damage control. And I want us to take this time of solitude and really get to a place where we learn to check ourselves first so that when these doors open back up, we are equipped and we are ready to receive the people out there who God has assigned to us.
Portia.
Oh, you know, but this past week has been, and this last, yeah, these past, I want to say months, but the last 2 weeks have really been hard for me. As
Mm,
a Black woman and as a woman who loves God, because I love God. I'm not perfect, but I love God. And there are often times where I have felt, I maybe not have felt the magnitude of his grief, but I felt grieved in
mm,
my spirit as a Black woman because I felt like, how did I get to here? How
yeah,
could a woman that has been used by God, that knows without anybody, I don't need nobody to come tell me I've been called by God. I know I've been called by God because of the hardship that I've overcome.
mm-hmm,
But this has been one of the hardest weeks for me as a Black woman and as a Black woman who is subscribed to Christianity, right? And so I want to leave with you saying that I we're not perfect. We're never going to be perfect, and
that's right.
in my world, perfection is just an illusion because there is only one perfect person that ever
Ever walk
navigated
this way.
this
Hmm.
life. Um, but you're still worthy. That dig deep within yourself, and I think a lot of things that have been attacking me or surfaced for me was God saying, "Look at yourself. This is what
Yeah.
you need to change about you because you cannot heal nobody. You cannot give my
Yes.
word to nobody. and you are broken, and
Bruised.
you
Mm.
have rage inside of you, and you're unforgiving, and you're combative, and you want to fight everybody. Because I be at 10. I done told a lot of people, either you gonna fight me or you gonna shut up, because that's what type of person I'm on. Period. On God. God know my heart. That's right now. Either you gonna fight me or you gonna be quiet. Cause ain't no, I'm not subscribed to
That's
anywhere near
right.
anymore. You feel me? But that's not of God. So God has allowed me to take this time out to say, work on you. So
Hmm.
I encourage, said all that to say, if you are subscribed to this faith and you are believing, you love God with your whole heart, the way you feel and the way you are currently, temporarily, does not disqualify you from Him. If anything, it gives you, it expands His grace upon your life
Absolutely.
for you to really get this thing right. Because there are nations, there are women, there are legacies, everything. There are your children that are attached to your
Mm.
deliverance, and but that thing cannot manifest and be birthed if we are mean and we are nasty and we're passive aggressive and we're bitter. So allow God during this pandemic to really purge you, to cleanse you, to purify you. Take time out to center yourself. Get a book, get a journal, hug your children, take a walk, pray, fast, change your diet. Allow God to do these things so that when the church finally does open up, He can use you to really restore what needs to be restored. Because I'm a firm
Amen.
believer, and I'll leave this, that it, being nasty is not a God. You walking around with an attitude, that's not God. And you can't package that up and peddle that to people, because information is accessible and people know what time it is. So,
Hmm.
you know, let God get the glory, heal, be set free, be delivered for real this time.
Amen. Thank you, ladies,
Amen.
on tonight. This has been truly amazing. I know without a doubt that lives have begun to be changed and people are beginning their own processes. We will be back for part 2. Thank you. I love you guys so much. Thank you for tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank
tonight.
you.
I want to say thank you to everyone who tuned in tonight. Thank you for joining us. It is my prayer that you begin to do the work in you. We don't want to be mean church girls any longer. If that was your testimony, let it be a past. Let God become victorious in your life. If you're known to be a gossiper, a liar, a cheater, whatever it is, let's begin to let God purge us, like Portia said, and make us new and make us whole and make us over. He desires that we be better. He desires that we be made whole. How are we going to win? We can't win the world until we love them. And if we don't love ourselves, if we're not looking in the mirror at ourselves, we can't possibly be trying to help other people come to know the God that we serve. So let's work on us. Let's do our part in the kingdom for ourselves to become better women of God, to serve the community and the world that God is bringing into the church when the church doors open. I love you. God bless you. Thank you for joining me on tonight. Sanctity of Sisterhood. I am my sister's keeper. I'm so full on tonight. I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. It is my prayer that you are blessed tonight. Good night.